Gorgeous trail run this morning at Jug Handle, one of my favorite trail runs. If this isn't interesting to you at all, fast forward by like 15 seconds. You run up to, it's about a 6 mile, 7 mile turnaround, but you run up to what's called the pygmy forest, which is real trees, but because of a couple of factors like the hard pan of the soil and the mineral content, the trees only grow to a certain extent, not very tall, in other words. And so they're sort of slightly higher than your head, but not by much. And it's like this little fairyland, kind of a cool thing. Anyway, very cool. So let's talk about breathing. Here's about me, in case you don't know. I'm a certified Oxygen Advantage breathwork instructor. That I've done. I went through the coursework, I did the thing, I'm certified. Now, that's over here. We'll talk about that in a second. Also, in 2017, I did the 10-week Wim Hof training, completed the whole thing, but I'm not certified as a Wim Hof coach or instructor, so I do not teach anybody the Wim Hof method, but I'm a longtime practitioner, as in literally every single day since July of 2017. The only thing I missed was 1 day of the cold therapy, but otherwise I do that as well, the breath work and the cold, every single day, basically, in my 39-degree cold tub on my deck, which you guys have seen if you've seen other videos of mine. Okay, so the question is, why do I do both? Why do I do the Wim Hof breathwork technique every day and the Oxygen Advantage? And here's why. They are, for me, they're two different approaches. There's some crossover. So let me talk about the Wim Hof method first. For me, the Wim Hof method is like going for a run. It's an exercise that's 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how many rounds I do. And it's that thing. I do it and I leave it there. I think there are physiological benefits to the breath, to that exercise, just like in the way that if you go for a run or you bike or some sort of exercise, there's physiological benefits. But that's not how I breathe all the time. So here's the Wim Hof breath work in a nutshell. Okay, I'm not going to do a whole thing right here, but here's what it looks like. Okay, it is through the mouth. It is essentially hyperventilating, but you're doing about, I do 40 breaths like this. Okay, I do 40 of those. On the 40th, I let go of that exhale. I don't push out. I let go of the exhale, and I hold. It's a very relaxed hold. You're not pushing out, so you're just letting the carbon dioxide come out and just kind of hit what I call the natural bottom, and then you just kind of hold. The first round usually is around a minute to a minute and a half, and then each subsequent round more time. So usually I finish by about 2 minutes, 30 seconds, sometimes 3 minutes of holding on the exhale. When you feel like you need to breathe, you simply take a breath in and hold for 15 seconds. And then you begin your next round, and so on and so forth. That's Wim Hof. It's what it is. It's 4 rounds. It's succinct. It's partitioned out of my day. That's what it is. Now, Oxygen Advantage. After Wim Hof, and I realized the benefits for me physiological to doing breathwork, I started to research more breathwork techniques. And I came across a book, which I highly recommend, named called Breath by James Nestor. And real good book, but in that book they talk about Oxygen Advantage. This is where I began to understand where functional breathing comes into play. And by functional breathing, I mean, unlike the Wim Hof thing over here, which is like an exercise, like I said, functional breathing and the exercises that I coach as an Oxygen Advantage instructor are to the end of the end of those exercises is to create a more functional breathing pattern at all times. That's essentially why it's more interesting to me as a coach, and why I decided to go back to school and become certified in that method and not the Wim Hof, is because for both me and my clients, in terms of stress management, anxiety, improved sleep, improved endurance, very cool stuff. So the exercises have a very specific goal in mind in the Oxygen Advantage camp, which is they are changing and triggering adaptations in the body such that a more functional breathing pattern can be established over time. And that's exactly what has happened with me. My sleep is better than ever before. I mean, I've been sleeping better than ever before. My endurance is great. Notice that the Wim Hof through the mouth. Oxygen advantage is all through the nose. Now, I'm 53. A long time, like as in up until 50, mouth breather for just physiological narrow nasal passages. And when I was a kid, I had allergies until I gave up dairy, and then they went away. But because of the allergies, my breathing pattern at night was very much of a mouth breather. That kind of thing. When I started coaching an oxygen advantage, and more importantly, when I started practicing it for myself, one of the things I do, and I know it's crazy, but it's just what it is I tape my mouth shut. And I've been doing that for a few years. A couple times I've forgotten, and guess what happens? I go right back to mouth breathing. So that the habit is established. I don't know if I'll ever be able to establish a nasal breathing only habit where I don't have to tape my mouth shut. Don't know, don't care. All I know is when I breathe through my nose, I feel much better, and I sleep much better, and I exercise much better. The oxygen advantage exercises are highly focused on carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide has a few roles in the body, but the big two, it probably has 2 or 3 tops, but the big 2 are the increase of carbon dioxide in the bloodstream is what triggers the brain to breathe. So when you feel our carbon dioxide come into your bloodstream enough, it goes, I gotta breathe. Now what happens in the Wim Hof method is in that 40 rounds of quick yes, you're bringing in oxygen, but your oxygen levels are already kind of okay. Anybody on a pulse oximeter is going to be 95 to 99%. Pretty much almost everybody's going to be like that. What happens in the Wim Hof is you're blowing out so much CO2 that the CO2 levels fall so much that by the time you finish your last breath and hold, it takes a very long time for that CO2 to come back to the point where you're triggered to breathe. Oxygen advantage, on the other side, is not doing this hyperventilation thing. Oxygen advantage is simply taking a regular breath through the nose, exhaling, not pushing out like Wim Hof. There's some crossover again, but just a relaxed kind of, and holding. But holding and pushing a little bit to get a little bit uncomfortable, called air hunger, to get to feel that air hunger, to feel uncomfortable and to kind of push it. So it too is an exercise, because what it essentially is doing, it is desensitizing the body to a little bit more CO2 in the bloodstream. And here's why. Because the other role of CO2 in the bloodstream is that it triggers the release of oxygen from the hemoglobin into the tissues. So while you put a pulse oximeter on your finger and it says 95 to 99%, you go, okay, fantastic, I got good oxygen in my blood. If your CO2 levels are too low, that oxygen stays, about 98% stays attached to the hemoglobin. What you want is to exist functionally most of the time with enough CO2 in the bloodstream that your oxygen is released from the hemoglobin and goes into the tissues. The problem is that in the stress of the modern world, where we're all kind of that higher baseline level of stress, we're taking too many breaths per minute ventilation they call it. Too many breaths per minute, and we're essentially what's happening there is by breathing too much, we're blowing out too much CO2, we're keeping our levels very low, and just a little bit more, we're so sensitive to it that as soon as it creeps, we go, and we breathe again, we feel suffocated and that whole kind of thing. So what oxygen advantage does is it, through the exercises where you're inhaling and exhaling one breath, not just, and holding on that exhale, like Wim Hof, you're holding on the exhale, but not with a bunch of pre-breathing. You're just holding on the exhale, and you're walking. I do it when I'm running, when I'm in training for an ultramarathon right now. So during my training runs, I'm breathing through my nose the whole time. So if I can't breathe through my nose, I slow down until I can. And during my runs, I am doing intermittent retentions. I'm holding, so I'm going while I'm running, and holding that exhale until it gets medium to hard, uncomfortable. Then I recover, keeping running, still running, and so on and so forth. And over time, and this has already happened because I'm still doing it, but I've done it a while, but over time I am now desensitized. You know, I got work to do still, but over time I have become less sensitive to CO2 in the bloodstream, which means my oxygenation is better. And when I go for a run where it's more of a maybe a tempo run or something, and I don't do retentions, I have improved. My running has improved, and so I'm using that method as to more of my endurance than I am the Wim Hof. So, in summary, The reason I do both is because for me, while there is crossover, they both hold on the exhale, they both exercise the cardiovascular system, and CO2 dilates the cardiovascular system just like CO2 does in both methods. Wim Hof, it's an exercise I do in the morning. I get in the cold tub. Oxygen advantage throughout the day. Scattered retentions, some of the actual exercises that I coach, I do myself. And while I'm running, I do that. And tape my mouth shut and breathe through my nose at night. And when I am sitting and calm, I come into the oxygen advantage in for about 4 seconds through the nose, and then a very light exhale, extended exhale for about 6 seconds. Again, all through the nose, in and out. So I do both. I do both because I find them both really helpful, and I really like what each brings to my life in terms of, again, my endurance and my stress levels and my anxiety and everything else that everybody's dealing with, because we're in a freaking crazy world, and that's what and that's how that happens. So that's why I do both. Check them out yourself. Try them out yourself. Again, I am breathing through my nose almost all day, except for when I'm talking or teaching or, obviously working with clients. But otherwise, if I'm hanging out and just working on my computer or whatever, it's through the nose now. And the benefits of that have been phenomenal. And so that's where that stands. So I got some questions along the way of why do you both? And that's why, because I dig them both. But if I had to choose one over the other, it would be oxygen advantage, because it is working again to the end of functional breathing throughout the day and into the night while you sleep. And to me, that's more useful as a health coach and a practitioner and a small steps coach. In fact, Breathwork has, as a nutritionist, it was kind of food focused, my work. Now, I don't even talk about food. I'm way more about breath first, in terms of the ability for somebody to manage their stress and the part that breath plays in that. And only after that do I say, okay, now let's talk about food, because now you're in a kind of a good mental place to have a discussion about it. It's not so triggering for people. So the breathwork has taken the pole position in terms of what I teach when I teach my clients my habit change program and my stress management program. Breathwork has taken the pole position in that. And with that, I will finish with a little clip of the end of my run today. Pretty freaking amazing. I hope you enjoy it and come back for more videos.